It's a bit of a ghetto recording setup, but it'll do. Sort of, yeah, whatever. Cool. Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of the Car Cranks, if I can speak English. I have a very special guest today, or even this evening. Hopefully you can't hear the rain. This is...
Arty?
Yeah. Arty and I go way back, went to school together in fact, so there's going to be some real talk, especially because you and I share a common love of a certain car, do we not?
That's right, yeah.
Yes, yes. Would you like to tell the lovely people what sort of car it is?
Toyota MR2, the best version, the SW20.
Best version. Ooh, it's a
Controversial.
That's a controversial statement, man. Yeah, some would argue that given the exposure the AW11's had recently with Voyager and
Eurovision,
and all that sort of stuff, that no, that 80s little wedge, that's the best one. But I rather like those too.
I think I've always liked initially when I first got mine donkeys ago, I liked the swoopiness of the more modern look of the SW20.
Yeah.
But as time's gone on, actually I looking at the few on the weekend at the Cars and Coffee, the AW11 is pretty, it's 80s cool. It's got that nice sort of,
it's that 80s
style with a samurai sword.
It's the kids era, like we were both kids in the 80s. And it was sort of the thing at the time, it was that wedginess, that shape, and it was interesting and cool. And I really like how weird the interior is on the AW11. Like you sit in there and it's like all blocky, and you've got like controls over here and all that sort of stuff.
Very 80s. Yeah, it's pretty cool. And I guess I've never driven one myself, but thinking with the couple hundred kilos lighter, it'll be a nice, more of a darty machine than even the SW20 is.
But they spin like that, and because they're even shorter, obviously, and it's exciting, but perhaps for the wrong reasons sometimes, because it's just a bit too
twitchy.
Yeah, like you get used to the twitchiness of the SW20, and then you drive an AW11, and you go, "Ooh, I see what they've done there." That's kind of scary, but fun, and I just love the look of them, man. But yeah, SW20 MR2. So why?
So this is going back probably, Jeepers, 25 years ago, a long time ago.
I was going to say, it's been a long time for you, hasn't it?
Yeah, I used to, I got involved a bit in, track work and whatnot, Barbagallos and autocars and all that sort of stuff, and I had an old E20 BMW, which was...
E28, like the 5 Series?
5 Series, 5 to 8, which was, for a luxury sedan, was actually quite good fun and quite capable, but I wanted something more... from the outset being more of a track car than, or a sporty car than the saloon.
Right.
And I was, back then the Silvias were the sort of the car that was, starting to come in, and they were, I guess, for what you get, for the price, they were excellent bang for buck. I didn't mind the styling on them. They were a bit sort of, more sort of generic looking and a bit more sort of plasticky, as it were, at the time, I sort of thought. But the SW20 came up, and I liked them, but they were sort of more expensive than the Silvias.
It's odd, isn't it? They were always more expensive.
But I managed to find one that was a decent price, and grabbed it, and and I had that for about six or 8 years or something. So that was a lot of fun. Did a lot of had some great times with that one.
Yeah. It's interesting you say that. If I can draw a parallel between the way that you fell into the MR2 and the same way I did, in that, because I think at the time when I caught up with you, it was out of school. I'm pretty sure it was like in the early 2000s or something like that. We were talking about cars and got car choice and stuff. You had your MR2 then, and I still had Starions and stuff.
That would have been the red one.
Yes. Yeah. And it was an interesting thing, because you say that you were taking a certain car to a track, and then you discovered its shortcomings and thought, I want something that's a bit more sort of focused and a bit quicker and a bit more sort of, that handles better and all that sort of stuff. I had the same thing. And it was with a Starion. I was at a track, and I had this wide body Starin, a silver one. You've seen a photo. I'm not going to flash up a photo up again because no one's really interested, honestly.
Is that the white body one?
Yeah, the silver one.
Yeah.
Spectacular looking car, but all of the lag in the world, and it just used to drive me mad. And I just wanted something a bit sort of, you know, more snappy.
Yeah.
And looking around at all the Sylvias and Skylines and stuff like that, and everyone had those.
Yeah.
And I sort of thought, I don't really want to run with the pack and have what everyone else has got. And my friends had them as well, you know, like at the time there would have been 4 friends who had some sort of S chassis Sylvia 200SX sort of, you know, 180SX car. I just thought, I don't want to be like them. And I thought, well, all right, what do I want? And it's like, oh, I want something a bit sort of more exotic, I guess. And just, yeah, looked at the MR2. I drove 3, bought the second one I drove, and because I drove an NA Targa, an NA hardtop, and the turbo hardtop, which I currently own. And actually, the NA hardtop was really good too.
Yeah, okay.
That NA punch is good. I mean, it runs out of puff sort of fairly quickly. Like, it's not nearly as quick. But one of the best things about it was the response. It was just, you know, it was really good. It's no turbo, and it was just, you know, just the throttle response was really good. But much the same, man. I had an experience at a track and just thought, I want something faster or quicker. And that mid-range in the turbo ones is amazing.
Yeah. I've only ever driven the turbo one. I think I only drove one other one than the one I ended up buying. But yeah, the grunt was, you know, it's just nice. And the the styling, I think you know, because you're getting like a mid-engine layout. It's super practical for a mid-engine car. You know, sort of the big boot, you know, plenty of cabin storage.
That boot.
Yeah.
Oh man, I love it when you open the boot up and you're carrying like several of the sort of stubby 20-litre jerry cans to the track or whatever, and you see people and it's like, oh, I'm just going to get some stuff out of the boot, and they're like, boot? Yeah. So you go behind the engine cover and get the boot, and they're like, oh my God, look at all the space in here. And it would end up being, I think, that my track, because you'd sort of Tetris all this stuff in when you go to the track or whatever, and I'd go to Collie sort of fairly frequently, and I'd have two 20-litre stumpy sort of stubby jerry cans, sort of the fat ones, not the tall and skinny ones, a 10-litre one, a tool bag with sort of the essential tools, and some spare fluids like I think brake fluid and coolant and like spare oil and stuff like that as well, and all fit in that space. So you'd pop the boot and be like, yep, and nothing moves because it's all that. It's deep and you can sort of stack it on top of each other.
Perfect cubby hole.
It's great, isn't
box.
it?
Yeah,
it's fantastic. Nice. And then I'd put some other stuff in the frunk on top of the spare wheel, just stuff that sort of was sort of flat that you could sort of squeeze in there and anything like that. Amazing amount. In fact, I remember carrying a mate's bag because he couldn't fit it in his MX-5, his overnight bag. He packed everything in the car. I think what did he have? It was an NB MX-5, so second gen, and he had everything in the car, like all the spares and stuff like that. And then he got his bag and he's like, oh. And he had stuff in the footwell of on the passenger side, stuff on the seat and everything like that. I'm like, give it here. I just threw it in the footwell of the front of my passenger side of the MR2, and that was it. And yeah, just pulling everything out when you get to the track, and people are like, how does all that fit in such a small car? And then you sit in it, and because I'm about 6'1" and that's sort of a little bit, people go, oh, you know, there's not much room in those things. It's like, sit in it.
Yeah.
Tell me there's not much room. It's amazing.
It's super comfortable. Yeah, it's actually, you know, like, and I think they've been like a forgotten gem. Like, you know, even when they were new, they weren't really that, you know, there wasn't that many in Australia sold and even imported.
Expensive.
And they were expensive. Then like when the Australian NA ones, they got to like 60K when they, you know, at the end of the Rev 5s.
The GT spec or whatever, it was ridiculous.
So it's crazy because, you know, this was what, late 90s, so you could get a WRX for 40, this was 60, and the WRX, you know, shuttled over in terms of performance-wise because the Australian was in NA.
It was.
So I think but I reckon their time will come. Like, you know, they are a forgotten gem, I reckon.
Well, interesting thing is that when I looked to replace mine, they were sort of hovering around 30-ish for the same sort of car. But they're like unicorns, and that's the thing, is like, you know, I wanted the same spec as what I've got, and they don't exist. Or if they do, they sell for about 30 grand or whatever, and then you have to bring it here. And then you have to pay import duties and all that sort of stuff. And it's like, oh, it gets very expensive. And the problem I think now is that a lot of these cars, and maybe the SW20 is included in that, you look at the price and you think, well, let's say 35 grand, think of all the cars you can buy for 35 grand. It's like, would you still buy another one? And the answer is,
Yeah, I know. But a lot of the cars, the prices recently have gone pretty, pretty crazy. So
oh mate,
it's
ridiculous.
yeah, I think it's yeah, you're right. As you get more and more, there's the range of cars and really nice cars does increase, and you sort of think, well,
Yeah, exactly.
there's other cool, nice, capable, cars
Stuff
out there.
that's sort of a bit newer, maybe the parts are easier to find and it's a bit easier to work on because it's not mid-engine and doesn't require like dropping K-frames and all that sort of
Yeah,
stuff.
I didn't mind working. Actually, there was my early one was the Rev 2 engine.
Oh yeah. Oh, you had a
Which- or
Rev 1 with a
sorry,
Rev 2, didn't you?
Rev 1 Gen 2, yes, that was
Yeah.
a JDM hardtop.
Mm.
And the, yes, I think it was the Rev 2 motor. So the oil filter was sort of upside down near the turbo, near the dump pipe.
Oh, right.
So when you
yeah.
undid the when you undid the filter for an oil change, half the time it'd just drop its guts all over the all over the dump
Damn it.
pipe and between all the heat shields, so you just smoke away for a few days. Whereas the Gen 3 was much easier, the oil filter underneath. They did a few improvements.
Wow.
But a lot of the work was actually, apart from having to contort yourself into reaching over things, it wasn't. I didn't think it was that bad.
Well,
Maybe I just got used to it as I was.
well, there's that. I just remember skin knuckles and scraped arms and just, and one of the things the turbo went on mine. Actually, no, the manifold developed a crack. The turbo manifold developed a crack.
Yeah.
So I replaced that. And then at the same time, I had the turbo rebuilt because that looked a bit, maybe I'll find a photo and flash it up. Anyway, so yeah, that looked a bit average. So I had everything sort of apart and had it all ceramic coated. Well, the back of the turbo ceramic coated, the dump pipe ceramic coated, the standard manifold ceramic coated, just so they could sort of manage heat a bit better or whatever. Caning on a track, you want as little heat as possible. And yeah, just getting that and pulling it apart and, putting it all in there and stuff. It goes in, but oh my God, like, because you've got sort of this much room to try and get a turbo and a manifold in there, and oh my God, you have to decide whether you're going to take that off first or take it all off together, and it's a bit more of a pain. But
Yeah. I never did anything that drastic in the car.
No?
It was more just rocket cover gaskets and
oh yeah,
that sort of stuff. But it was one for the amount of I did a lot of track work in it. I did over 100,000 Ks. When in the time I had it,
yeah, right.
and a lot of that was it was a time when I was doing motorsport stuff. Every second weekend sort of thing, and it was super reliable. Like the reliability in it was amazing. Yeah.
Amazing, isn't it? Like,
It was just, and that's one of the things I think, if you're looking to buy another car, and although you can buy a newer car for the same money, I think it's almost like it's much better for compared to some of the new cars, which are actually more plastic. There's a lot more plastics in the engine bay and that sort of stuff. Like you're not really you're not gaining much from the H perspective, apart from maybe, refinement and things like that, and all the modern niceties.
Well, I think that 1990s period was almost peak period, really, because cars became modern enough to be reliable and efficient and well made and stuff like that. But then looking back, they're still old enough now to be fairly simple in comparison to, they don't have all the onboard stuff, and you don't have to change a headlight globe. You don't have to go through the bloody wheel arch and stuff like that. Oh my God. That's infuriating. I mean, even as recently as, actually even as old as 2002, you buy some of those cars, and even just ordinary passenger cars, and you want to change one headlight globe. Well, you take the bloody wheel arch liner out. And it's like,
it's a 1 hour exercise for something that should take 5 minutes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I remember the days when your old cars, and actually mind you, the MR2, you've got to take the screws off, take the shroud off, and then take the screws that are retaining the headlight. That's more complicated. That's a pop-up headlight thing, and that's.
Yeah.
I mean, I had that with my Starion. I've seen it with FC RX-7s and stuff, and it's just what it is for pop-up headlights. But pop-ups are cool. But yeah, just changing headlight globes on modern cars is a pain in the backside. Anyway, so yes, we've established the MR2 is the best car in the world, and no, not really, but it's certainly up there.
Though.
It's up there.
Top 5 at least.
Oh look, and that's the thing. Again, getting back to, would you buy another one? And I would have to think long and hard about it. I probably would, but it'd be like, ooh, considering what they go for now versus what you can buy. And I think, because this is the thing, this leads me on to the next point, is that, what did you replace your MR2 with?
So that was an interesting So basically, back then I was still doing motorsport. Had a kid, still want to do motorsport. So I thought, and the car was getting old, so that's why I replaced it, because I thought it's getting a bit old.
Yep.
Just want to get something newer, and preferably with more seats, so I can use it as just with the family, basically use it more than just a fun car. And it was actually interesting because this would have been early 2000s. There was quite a limited choice in terms of getting a sporty car with a decent amount of grunt that had 4 seats.
4 doors as well.
Not necessarily 4 doors,
No? Okay.
preferably, but it was basically you had the Euros, like the 5 Series, 3 Series, whatever, the ones with the bigger engines.
Yep.
There was the Skylines, which I was never really a fan of. Like, for some reason, I just never, they were a bit big and whatnot, it just never really tickled my fancy as much as to make it a hard choice. And it was really actually tricky to find like a newer, sportier car without getting a newer car that's Euro, that's double the price of the usual sort of stuff.
Yeah.
So I ended up buying an 03 Rex.
Oh, right.
Yeah, which was
You're one of those people.
one of those people, yeah. And it was quite a quite an interesting contrast to the MR2.
Yeah.
It was, and even the Rex, like I knew they were quick and whatnot and full drive and all that sort of stuff. And I went through. I didn't know which one, what the difference were, with the GC8, I think it's called, and the GD series. And the GC8s, when I drove a couple of them, because they were, probably a generation newer than the SW20.
Yep.
I was expecting, similar sort of performance, because some sort of similar weight and power and whatnot, but a more refinement. But it was still quite crude in the rawness sense.
Yeah. Yep.
And I thought, no, that's a bit, it felt quite tinny as well. Like, the MR2 sort of felt quite.
What's Toyota?
Yeah,
It feels solid.
Yeah.
It feels solid. Simple as that.
Whereas the early Rexes felt, it did feel like tinny. And so then I went to the Bug Eyes, and they were actually, I think the 01s had, they were high geared, so very, quite tardy, like not very responsive, and you didn't really feel like they were powerful. So the first of the Bug Eyes.
Tall gears and stuff.
Tall
was it?
gears, yeah.
Yeah, right, okay.
And then the O2s, they shortened the gearing back again to what they used to be, because I think they went to more refined sort of, and the car, the chassis whole thing, the car was far more refined and
Probably trying to chase some fuel economy numbers as well, having tall gears.
yeah, probably.
Yeah.
And
Or emissions or something like that.
yeah, or probably a combination. And then the O3 had the variable valve timing.
Oh, right.
So when I drove one of them, that was actually far nicer to drive without, the other ones you had to basically thrash to get decent performance out of them, whereas this was more, far more low down torque, so far more usable in an everyday sense.
Yep.
And a bit more refinement and that sort of stuff, and that's what I ended up getting was, it was almost, same thing I had that for about six or 7 years, and never did one track day in it.
No?
No, so
You
sort
got
of,
the performance car and...
yeah, that's right. Yeah, so life sort of had different priorities and whatnot, and never once took it to the track, which was a bit of a bummer. But as a car, it was but it was probably similar performance to the MR2. Obviously far more usable because proper 4-seater and whatnot.
Yep.
Seats were nice. The interior was quite nice. It was actually quite so much more modernised looking.
Yeah.
Refined, still quite revving. I remember like the MR2 used to be about 3,000 revs on the highway, about 100,000 k's or something, 100 k's.
Yeah, that's probably about right.
And the Rex was the same because it still had the low gearing and it was only a 5-speed.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, they were... When was 6-speed then? Was that the generation
I think
after?
no, it was the STIs. So I think all the STIs were 6-speed.
Right,
and then I think that I don't know, whenever
newer
at some
ones.
stage they got 6-speeds in a normal WX. Yeah, so I had that, and it was nice, but it was so capable. It was boring. Like it was so grippy. Like in the wet, it was like it basically didn't matter if the roads were wet or dry. It was just in the MR2, my early one was like white knuckle driving experience whenever it was wet because you're always aware of of it snapping out. Whereas the Rex, you could you could give it to your grandma driving in the wet, and it was it was fine. But it took the it sort of you felt disconnected from the car. Like it was. Yes, it was good, but you had to be really pushing it to get any decent,
It's the all-wheel drive
that
thing as well,
enjoyment.
isn't it? Yeah.
So it's a bit of a two-edged sword. Like it was super capable, but it's sort of you couldn't use it easily. You couldn't get the fun out of it on your normal driving as you could in the MR2.
You could see, I suppose, then you could see why they became so popular.
Oh yeah,
Because it just became so easy to drive. Yeah.
All round. They became the Ram Raiders car of choice, didn't they? Back in the day.
That's right. Oh God, yeah, they could have their whole crew in it because it's 4 seats, 4
Yeah.
doors, and it's like, yep, let's go and steal an ATM and pull it out of the wall or something like that. And
Don't
yeah,
have to
just-
leave your homies at home. Take them with you.
exactly, and get the crew out there with the crowbars. Yeah, that and also the darling of the flat brimmed wearing baseball cap and
That's
the,
right,
the
yeah,
vaping
yeah.
and all that sort of stuff. So, which I think actually though it's interesting because I was thinking about this the other day. I don't see many 90s WRXs on the road anymore. Like,
No.
not like you used to. Like you used to see so many of them. I mean, 90s cars in general, but you used to see so many. They used to be everywhere. You know, like every third car was some bro with his hat and his vape hatch. Oh my god. Anyway, but yeah, I think they've all moved to Golfs. I reckon.
Yeah, but I think it's same with the MR2s. All those cars that came down in price to a point where they're like 3, 5, 6 grand or whatever.
Yeah.
Well, they were basically just a runabout car for anyone, so no one really cared after them because they were just a hack,
Yeah.
and they either wrapped around a pole or they just deteriorated and disintegrated and
It's a shame.
yeah, they disappeared, which is which is a shame because some of those cars they were pretty unique for their time.
I just remember, even as recently as like 8 years ago, being on an MR2 cruise through Perth Hills or whatever, and one of the blokes showed up and he'd paid $1,000 for admittedly a fairly, it was all right looking, it was a little bit rough, but it was an auto Targa,
Yeah.
and it was all right. Like he drove it and it didn't let him down once during the whole drive. It was quite spirited to drive, and
Yeah, I know. Now you pay more for a set of taillights.
good God,
Yeah,
unbelievable,
crazy.
isn't it?
Yeah.
So, what have you currently got?
Currently, I have a couple of boring family cars, an X-Trail and a Mitsubishi Challenger,
Yep.
4-wheel drive. So yeah, so they're the normal, everyday driving cars.
We're not really interested in those.
No.
Well, we are, but we're not.
No, so they do the job, but yeah, they're nothing to get too excited about. And I've got a E93 Beamer which I've recently bought that I'm fixing up.
135?
335.
335,
Yeah,
that's right,
So that's the convertible, hardtop convertible coupe.
Yep.
Yeah, it's the same engine as the 135i.
Yep.
So yeah, the N54, the twin turbo 3 litre 6. So yeah, so hoping to get that going soon and have a bit of fun with that. And yeah, so that'll be the.
That's got 4 seats, doesn't it?
It does have 4 seats, yeah. Probably the kids won't complain too much in the back. But no, so that's yeah. Like when when I sold the MR2 last year, it was. There's always something that you want to have a car that's interesting. Do you know what I mean? And it's like, well, what should I, because it's, I don't know, like you just, even if it's slightly more than the vanilla, something that's got a bit of something.
Yep.
To stir the motoring spirit.
Yes.
Yeah, so at the moment that's that one there. So I'm hoping to get that sort of going soonish and enjoy that, see what that's like, and
BMW.
yeah, let's see how that goes. Yeah, so I mean the previous BMW I had, the E28, I had the same thing. That actually stayed in the family for probably 20 years, I think.
Wow.
I had it for about 6, and then moved on to my friend, who's now my wife, and then her brother, and then father-in-law and whatnot. So and that was a super reliable, same thing. Like that was needed some had the
Was that 528?
yeah 528. So it's
Yeah.
basically the top of the Wazza 5 Series at the time.
They are revered, those things. They really are.
Yeah.
People talk about them all the time, like those E28, like especially the E28 M5, talking about it
Oh
being
yeah,
like.
but they're
Oh, but that's. I mean, it's another level above, obviously. But yeah,
super rare and yeah, that's
people
the-
talking about
that's
those
nice.
being like the M5 to have sort of thing. Like it's amazing actually because, like, obviously this here is inspired by other stuff that I've seen other people do or whatever, and the probably one of the most, I'd say the podcast I listen to the most. I think it's one I told you about. I don't know if you've listened to it or not. It doesn't really matter, but I'll remind you anyway. The Carmudgeon Show. Shout out to Jason Camisa and
Oh yeah,
Derek
I did.
Tomhoff and Scott.
Did listen to a couple of them. Yeah.
Yeah, so they're very Eurocentric, I think, being in the US. So they're not that familiar with all the Japanese stuff. But they were talking about the E39 M5 being, one of them quite likes them, and one of them thinks, but they both agree that the E28 M5 is like the one.
Yeah.
The one to
yeah.
have. That and the E30 325 IS as well.
Oh yeah.
Being the
Well,
car.
they're the. I think they're the last of the old school.
Yeah.
Beamers, which have that certain styling.
Mm.
Although even like I quite like the E34, the next generation M5 or M5 series.
The first of the big-bodied cars, basically.
Yeah, slightly more
yeah.
roundy and whatnot. But yeah, no, the E28s, I don't know, they just got a nice, they still got that sort of 80-ish retro look inside. I don't know if you've been inside, but I had the one with the trip computer, which is like an old calculator, you know, with all the functions and stuff. And
Yep,
it was, you know, it's nice. And it was actually comfortable, you know, it was fun to hunt around. Well made, yeah. It still had some, what do they call them, character things, you know, BMW character things, but they were actually quite easy to fix. And there was a lot of, you know, hacks that that I sort of found out and I discovered myself, or, you know, did myself to make it easier to repair. But
But not overly complicated as well.
no, I was still fairly. I mean, the fuel injection was, you know, L-Jetronic or whatever it was. The
The
old
Bosch stuff or whatever
Bosch
it is?
stuff,
Yeah,
with the flap valve airflow meter and whatnot. Electronic ignition was pretty basic. I think that valve clearances, but yeah, it was actually relatively simple.
I think...
Compared to the new ones, definitely.
Oh, God. We were talking about this in a previous episode, actually, but just looking at the state of BMW V8 engines, and they're all junk. They're all terrible engines. They all have the same problem. They have valve stem seal issues and stuff like that. They'll just start smoking after a certain amount of time. Then you rebuild them and they do it again. It's like, I don't understand what the hell's going on there, but yeah. Even you watch people like, I don't know if you've heard of the Car Ninja, and he fixes BMWs a lot.
Yeah.
And he's got it down to a fine art of fixing certain cars. It's like, this car, this is pretty standard. And like, you know, he's engine out in an hour or something like that. It's absolutely ridiculous how good he's gotten at fixing some of these cars.
Done one or two.
You know, and he's like, brings an E92 M5, E92 M3 or whatever in there. It's like, yeah, valve stem seals, let me guess. Yeah, bloody shocking things, honestly. But yeah, it's just one of those things that, you know, it's unfortunate, certain cars and certain things. Anyway, so you like BMWs. You've come back to your own.
The BMWs actually, it's funny. They've all got a particular smell. Like you hop into a Beamer or an old Merc, and they've got that BMW smell. I don't know what it is, but you just go, oh yeah. You know, you can go in there blindfolded and you can tell what car it is.
That wood and leather sort of smell or something. Yeah,
I don't know what it is, but it's something. But the other thing is, it's the way they feel to drive. They've just got, you know, like I haven't driven many since my 28, but mate's got had an E46 coupe, and it just drives. It's just got a certain feel, and you I've driven that after, you know, 20 years or whatever hiatus from my other Beamer. Like one drive and you go, oh yeah, like you remember that sort of feel tight, you know, the steering's nicely weighted.
Yep.
It's a sort of like a combo of, you know, luxury and you know, responsiveness and sort of, you know, I mean, it is a car that does. So I can see how people, you know, get like that brand and keep with the brand, if you know what I mean, because they do have that certain driving feel.
Well, it's interesting, so I think culturally, you know, if we're talking about like a car culture thing, country to country or whatever, well, German car culture is very different. And, you know, there's a lot of open motorways. They had, you know, de-restricted motorways, freeways, whatever, highways, you know, the Autobahn. And I think a lot of it is that these cars are made to go fast and to do so reliably, somewhat effortlessly and quiet.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
They're good amount of refinement.
Awesome
you know,
cruises,
like,
you could see why there's not hop on the Autobahn, gets to 200 and it just sucks up the miles. It's
and
really nice.
But if you were to do that in something like well, let's see now, a WRX, you'd be like, because
I mean, it still does it, but it's far more.
It becomes
it's
tiring.
It is, it's fatiguing.
It's really like when it's loud and you're being engaged and you've got sort of all those senses just on a high alert because of it's noisy and it's more twitchy and it's sort of, I guess, more rattly maybe in some respects. But WRX is not the only car. I mean, I remember I had a DC2 Integra Type R, so 2002, the last of the sort of DC2 shape, and that was dreadful on a freeway.
Yeah. Too hardcore.
Rattly tin can.
Yeah,
basically, you know.
Even the MR2 is the same. Like, you know, on the highway, it's fun because it is you know, responsive and all that sort of stuff. But it's after a while you sort of
driving to and from Collier a couple of times, and it's like Yeah, I started towing it, basically. I ended up buying a car trailer and just started towing it there, putting it on the car trailer and just going,
Yeah, okay.
now that I've hammered this car all day, I want to be able to put on a trailer and just drive home
Let it
in
relax.
comfort and in quiet and with an automatic gearbox and just
Yeah.
not necessarily fall asleep, but you know, just be more relaxed in your driving, especially on the way home after a full day. But yeah, I guess it's one of those things where if you're prepared to put up with it, it's worth it. But I don't know, maybe as you get older, you
Exactly
sort of think,
that, yeah. As you get
there's
older,
a better way, maybe.
yeah. I'm not saying that I'm getting old, but yeah, the I don't know if it's priorities, but you're driving like the MR, you know, the black MR2 that was loud, very stiff, great for a blast.
Yep.
But even driving that for a week, you know, to work and back, which is a long trip, you sort of go, oh my god, you know, it's yeah, it's not, it's
What's wrong with you?
exciting, but it's not. Yeah, it's just
Yeah.
There's different cars. I guess it's like horses for courses, isn't it? You get
It
different
is.
cars that do different things.
Well, this is the thing, like, you know, people, I'll frequently get, especially from people who are not car people, it's like, oh, why do you have so many cars? And, okay, full disclosure, I did have 6 running reliable and licensed and insured cars until recently, and I sold 2. I'm down to 4, but the MR2 is getting fixed, so it's not in my possession, and the Commodore, I've got a 94 VR Commodore, which is parts, and that's parts for a certain
So that
conversion
doesn't
of
count.
yeah, it doesn't really count. Despite the fact that a mate has it at the moment, he's driving that around because he's taking one of his cars apart. So I think what I'm getting at is that different cars give you different experiences, and
Absolutely, yeah.
you're looking for something a little bit different. Where, you know, like I had, you know, a few different Starions, but the interesting thing about the Starions was each one had a different experience. One was refined and quiet and Japanese and smooth. The other one was sort of more raucous and raw and loud and much faster and ridiculous.
So that's just the way that you had them sort of
Yeah,
set up and
it's just
configured
because
and
I
whatnot.
had them, you know.
Yeah,
like, but now, of the 4 cars, I've got, you know, a daily driver, which is a 2002 Japanese Mazda, and it's not super refined, but it's easy.
yeah.
You know, it's a little bit sporty. It's manual. I would have preferred it if it was a hatch. I might have even swayed to picking an automatic over a manual, but you don't get to pick these cars because they come up. Well, it's the commute thing, man. You know, it's the refinement or whatever.
I'm sure it's got a light clutch, Jay. Come on.
It's a very light clutch. It's a great car. Great car. Anyway.
I think, like I miss. I've never been, maybe because it's the type of manual cars I've had. I've never, you know, people say, oh, it's a pain in the ass in traffic. Fair enough, I can understand that.
Yeah.
But none of my cars, I got to a thing where, you know, even commuting, where they were manual, and I thought, oh, I really want an automatic. Because it's that, you know, it's that thing where you're doing
It's
the thing,
different, yeah.
the heel and towing, all that sort of stuff, you know, which is just, for me, it's being part of the car, and that's one of the joys, if you know what I mean, of engaging and driving
absolutely.
the car.
Well, I think it would be a different story if you spent your journey to and from work on the freeway in stop-start.
Yeah, I did it. Like, you know, the wrecks and whatnot. That was
Yeah.
you know, that was my daily for years.
But how long ago was that? Oh. And here's the thing, right? Because now I reckon if you did it, you'd be like, there's a better way, maybe.
No, because even in the MR2, like, you know, when I used to drive that, that was fine. Like
Okay.
a different,
All right. Okay.
yeah, but maybe if I had like a car that was, you know, some cars the clutch take up is a bit weird and there is a stall and that sort of stuff, and
Yeah.
you know, then that might be good because that, you know, they can become tiring and a pain.
Oh,
But,
yeah, 100%.
I call the manual ones I've had. They've all been fine to drive, so it didn't really faze me, and it was, you know, it's enjoyable.
I suppose it just depends on how lazy you want to be as well. Like, I must admit, having a big Holden, admittedly 6-cylinder, but automatic wagon that had a good amount of refinement, it was very quiet, very comfortable, very nice, soft, supportive seats. That was an automatic,
Yeah,
and I would never have changed that, simply because, you know, it was just very easy. And there were a couple of times there where I was stuck in traffic, and, you know, it's in D for drag.
Day mode.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, doesn't work at night.
No, God, no. And you just, you know, you're just coasting or cruising or whatever. It's just easy. There's no stress or anything like that.
No, you're right. Yeah. The car talk. I had an old Courier,
Oh, yeah.
Just a banged up beast that was super reliable and super handy, being a ute and whatnot.
Yep.
And that was actually, it was weird because when you hopped in it, it was, crap performance.
Yeah.
It was a slush box, and you drove differently because, like, automatically you're not expecting anything out of it because
Yeah,
it's just,
yeah, exactly.
it's
Funny,
an
isn't
old,
it?
And you change the way you drive it, and that was actually where you go, oh, it's auto, it's whatever, it's your mindset sort of changes and you drive it. It was actually quite interesting how your driving style changed
What's the
when you
corporate
hopped in.
speak? Managing expectations and knowing that, you're not going to go fast in this thing. So
But it
just
was,
relax.
it was, it was, and it was just, just as soon as you hopped in, I was like, this is going to be a chill journey.
Very much so. Yeah. Was that automatic or manual?
That was automatic.
That was
yeah.
auto, yeah.
And
So-
that was 4-speed. It was like good old 4-speed.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, there you go, mate. There you go. All right, so what have we got to talk about now? Okay. You've got 50 grand. You can buy one car. It has to be new. What do you get?
I would get. I'd have to check the pricing if I'm being unrealistic. But out of the GA Yaris, I think is.
52, 53?
Oh, yeah, that's pretty close. I'm sure we could bargain them out a bit when the supply comes in.
Well, yeah, they'd probably put a premium on the bloody thing and charge you 60 grand for it at
Yeah,
this point in time.
true.
God, car prices.
But out of the new crop, like a lot of the new cars, they're either mega bucks, like and also like say the M cars, which have always been, my sort of
Yeah.
hero cars, like the M2s, M3s, and all that stuff. They've sort of gone. I'm not a fan of the styling that they've.
Those massive kidney grill things.
And
what
like
have
the
they
M2,
done?
I've only seen the M2, but it looks like someone ordered on Wish.com, and it's just I don't understand it.
It's
That's
weird, isn't it?
yeah, it's that stuff, and I think from a performance thing, I think the cars these days, a lot of cars are plenty fast enough for what you need. So it comes to being, and also they're all getting big. So like what. Like even the Corolla, the new Corolla is probably
huge.
more like the size of, I don't know, an old Corona or whatever.
Yeah.
So that's why they keep introducing the newer, Echos and Yaris's and whatever.
Looking at things like the new Civic and stuff like that, it's bigger than like a 90s
Oh,
Accord.
it is, yeah.
Bigger than a 2000s Accord. I remember seeing it.
Probably Commodore size, the old Commodore size.
Oh, mate, unbelievable. Well, even, the Commodore was no exception there, but just even seeing some of these cars that were the sort of the small car, like a Civic, Civic's massive.
Yeah.
It is massive. And the same with the Corolla. Like the new Corolla, I looked at it the other day and I'm like, wow, that's a huge car now.
They
Like
are.
plenty of room inside and stuff like that. And they look good, but the roads aren't getting any bigger. But the cars are, and it makes it really, really tough to sort of pedal some of these things because the other thing as well is like all the blind spots, because of design and stuff, you sit in it and you go,
Can't see anything.
like all the glass is effectively, they've done that really weird thing where in the 80s they didn't put much glass in, and in the 90s they put big glass in, and then they've come back to small glass again. I think it must be for a safety thing or a structural thing, but you sit in them and you just go, trying to look through the rear window, which is like literally this,
Yeah.
and of course it's got a reverse camera because it needs one, there's no question of that, because otherwise you're not going to see anything. But yeah, just the size of them is ridiculous.
Yeah. That's why I tend to like, cars that aren't huge because it's generally they're lighter, so by default you get more response.
100%.
Just easier, easier to drive, easier to park.
Yeah.
And just I don't know, just.
And when you do park them, there's room on either side in the parking spot.
Yeah.
You're not having to sort of negotiate and yeah. Anyway, so yeah, 50 grand.
I reckon the
so we get back to
GA Yaris.
that.
So
GA
I
Yaris.
haven't GA Yaris. Yeah, I haven't driven one, but they to me look like the replacement for the what they call the Group A Celicas. Back in the 90s.
GT4s.
GT4s, that's
Yep.
the ones. Yeah.
Mm.
Whereas it's that style of car, it's Toyota like it's one of the first, apart from the 86, one of the first exciting cars that Toyota's come out with really since the
So not a fan of the Supra then?
since the 90s. Which one? The BRZ?
No, the new one, the Supra.
Oh, the Supra. Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry, Supra. Subaru. No.
Too much BMW?
No, not that. I reckon the that sort of stuff is and the Bentos apparently getting more reliable and whatnot. But more the styling. It's a bit, I don't like the overstyled. All most cars seem to be like You know, they're giving everyone everyone put their bid in, and they
A
just
slash here, and a vent there, and a crease there, and
yeah,
it's too much.
It's okay, but it's I don't know. It could be nicer. It's like they
Yeah.
almost made it look like the JZ80
Yeah,
to give it that sort of that sort of vibe, which
Yep.
I understand. But why they do that? But yeah, it just doesn't. I'd rather get out of those. I'd rather get the Z4 version, which is basically the same car but in a different. Especially I think the equivalent one is I'm not sure what E series it is, or whether maybe it's a G series or whatever the new ones are. But the folding hardtop one.
Oh, yep.
It's the same, similar things. Got a nice long bonnet. It's got the sort of old classic roadster styling. I'd get them over a Supra.
Yeah, I must admit, because this was the thing that I sort of looked at. Now, I'll find a photo and I'll flash it up. But Lexus LC500. I don't know if you're familiar. Yeah. Now that's a beautiful car,
nice.
right?
That's
a beautiful car.
nice.
That's not near 50 grand, so we're off topic a little bit here. But I remember seeing a side profile like that and going, if someone was to do a modern interpretation of a JZA80 Supra, it would look like that. And lo and behold, the concept for the FT1, which was the new Supra at the time, which they discontinued and went with the Z4 platform, was based on the LC500.
Yeah, okay.
So I thought they should have made that the Supra, but they didn't, but they were going to. And it was the whole platform and technology sharing thing with BMW that they did at the time, Toyota that is, that they decided to go for Supra with Z4 rather than Supra, but based on, because back in the 80s and the 90s, Toyota had like a Lexus car and a Toyota car, and they were basically the same car, bar maybe some extra sound deadening the Lexus, or it might have a different engine option or something like that. So like,
more fruit.
Exactly right. So, Sora, Lexus, the Toyota Sora was Lexus.
LS400. LS400, yeah.
No,
SC400.
SC400. SC400, there you go. Exactly, yeah.
Yep.
Which was also
the Celsius
basically
was the
Supra.
sedan.
Celsius was the Toyota, and then LS400 was the Lexus,
sedan,
different engine option. And the same with things like IS cars, like the Lexus IS200 was a Toyota Altezza.
But then they have, the IS sort of the late 2000, so 2007 or whatever to mid 2010. The IS 250 and 350. I don't think there was an equivalent non-Lexus version of that.
Probably in Japan, but not here.
Oh, true. Yeah. Probably all those Japanese imports.
That's weird because they end up with so many different models of almost exactly the same car. It's like, what the hell do you buy? Interestingly enough, you bring up the IS cars, and I mean, I sort of did, but you did as well. Have you ever driven an IS 250?
Yeah.
Have you ever driven an IS 350?
No.
They are not the same car. They are not even remotely the same.
I can imagine. 'Cause I've driven Orions, which goes, similar engine but front wheel drive.
Yep.
Or wrong wheel drive, as it were.
And
And that was, that's a big car, bigger than
car,
the IS 350.
Yeah.
And even that was, that was very grunty and responsive, oodles of grunt. So I'd imagine the IS 350 would be because they're 5 point something seconds, 0 to 100, so it'd be a
the IS 350 has more power, tuned, rear-wheel drive, is a smaller and lighter car. So if you take the IS 250 and forget about that entirely, because if you drove both back to back, you wouldn't even look at another IS 250 again. Now, there's nothing wrong with the IS 250. That car it's quite special. It's nice. You sit inside it. It feels, it's quiet. It's comfortable. It's refined and everything like that. It just lacks that sportiness.
The grunt,
that the car suggests something that it doesn't actually have. It's.
So like going from an NA MR2 to a turbo.
Yeah.
They're like chalk and cheese.
Pretty much. I mean, that's the reason I bought the turbos. But you can't go back.
Yeah.
I made the case, well, maybe the NA is better, but then you would certainly miss the turbo if you bought the NA. You're like, I think I made a mistake.
Which is one of the reasons I went to the WRX. Because, like you say, when you got that grunt, whether it's for overtaking or just fun, you miss it. Like you hop in a normal car and you go, you just, it's like it's lost a lot of happiness, a lot of joy.
A lot of joy. It's a good way to put it, man. Actually, it's a very good way to put it. But yeah, that was one of the things, is that driving those cars back to back, the 350 is a different car entirely. It's fast.
They're nice. They're one of the cars I would be happy with.
100%.
It's four door, it's comfy, it's got all the creature comforts, that you need.
Look good.
Looks okay, yeah. Looks actually for because the Toyota sort of went through from the exciting 90s period where they had a lot of the cool cars, they sort of went, a bit vanilla for quite a while. Whereas the
Wow.
IS
They all did
50s
though.
and IS.
That 2000s, early 2000s to sort of about 2008, there's a lot of bland cars out there from that period. I just remember looking at a lot of the stuff around at the time, and it's like, those are all
Yeah.
sports cars. Mazda was the
Well,
only
it
one who
was,
stuck
yeah.
with a sports car, MX-5. They kept making the MX-5. They didn't stop making it. They just kept making it. But everyone else just sort of went, we're not making sports cars
Yeah.
anymore. All our fun stuff is gone. I mean, I suppose that's why things like those Toyota, the Blade Masters and stuff like that, the Orion engine in a Corolla,
Yeah,
basically.
that'd be
That's
pretty,
pretty fun. But it's still just a Corolla, you know.
Yeah.
And the thing is, as well, is that I don't know how you feel, but to me, it should be obvious what it is when you look at the car, like what sort of car it is. That's why I love the MR2s, because you look at it and it is a dramatic, swoopy shape. It's mid-engine, it's got pop-up headlights. It looks dramatic and it suggests speed, and it's going to be quick.
It looks
And they are
different,
quick.
and it looks different. And, you're going back to, you do want to fall into the Sylvia stream because it's
100%.
everyone. And I've got, I'm the same in lots of things. I just like to do something different, just because like I don't know, just who I am, I guess. But yeah, it's just one of those things. And the other thing with the SW20, going back to the best car in the world, they still look modern. Like people that don't know,
Yeah.
they see it and they go, "Oh my god, what car is this?" Like and when you tell them it's 30 years old, they go, "What?"
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
aged.
It's aged very well.
It's very well. It's
Yeah.
actually
There's a few 90s cars like that, actually. And I must admit, it was one of those things where I had a Mitsubishi FTO. I've talked about it before and sold it recently. But people who didn't know the car didn't know how old it was. So this car was from 95, and I think you saw it briefly once.
Yeah.
And the shape to look at, and I won't bother flashing a photo up because you've seen it plenty of times. The Mitsubishi FTO, just Google it if you're really interested. And if you don't know what it looks like, you can find out. But it has an almost indeterminate age when you look at it. And they did make it, admittedly, it wasn't around for very long. It was only for 5 years or something like that, I think, the refresh or whatever. But people who don't know cars look at it and go, oh,
yeah.
is that really expensive, is it? Or obviously it's not, but is that an expensive car? What sort of car is that? Mitsubishi. They made cars that look like that?
Yeah.
Very interesting.
It was.
Yeah.
It had that styling that was unique, but yet sort of, very
Almost
how
familiar
would
in
you
a
call
way.
it? Probably resolved. The styling was resolved.
Yeah.
There's like a lot of cars like that are fussy, like the new cars. It would be like
Oh,
just
yeah.
make it fussy for the sake of making it fussy.
Those Honda Civics, not the current generation is better, but the previous generation is shocking.
Yeah, but those sort of cars like the FTO and the MR2 and there's a few of those where they just they'll look well
They
done.
still look modern, yeah, exactly. And in fact, I think, and this was the thing I've rediscovered, because Chris Bangle, who was the designer of all the
Chris Bangle.
BMWs, yeah. He said it, not me. Like all those BMWs in that time period where, was it 2003, I think it was, or something like that? He designed all of the, the ones and the threes, the fives, and all that sort of stuff. And there was that weird, awkward styling, some of those cars.
Yeah, the flames sort of surfacing, which
They look better now.
Oh, yeah, I agree. Yeah,
I think we're used to them. I don't know what it is, but I saw a. What did I see
maybe because
the
the
other
new
day?
ones are so controversial in comparison.
Possibly, yeah. Yeah, probably. Because, no, I saw a 5 actually it was an M5. It was a V10 M5. I was surprised it was driving, actually, and hadn't
A60.
exploded. Yeah, and I was surprised, I was surprised to see it on the road. But I remember thinking, that's a good-looking car. But when it first came out, I was all like,
Yeah,
And I
same.
think
Yeah.
maybe it's because the car that was in its predecessor was just a better-looking car, and it was smaller, and its proportions were sort of less strange, and I guess...
It's probably ahead of its time, like,
Yeah.
in terms of styling.
Yeah.
And you're right, when they first came out, I was like, oh my God, like, that's a bit wrong.
And
But
the
with
Z4 as
time
well in
now, they're
comparison.
actually, they're quite a sleek.
Yeah.
They're nice, they're well resolved. And in fact, the basic ones, or the non-M5 one, I think looks nicer. Like, I like the subtle pumped guards on the M cars. Like,
Yeah.
the M cars always used to be just subtly different. So if you knew, you go, well, that's something special.
Yep.
But the M5, especially around the rear diffuser, it's like they started putting all that fussy
Yeah.
stuff on there, and you think the non-M ones actually look cleaner and sleeker.
Yeah, 100%. And that's, well, because a mate of mine's got the 135 BMW, and I always liked the 335 as well. I think I sort of like the hard top, and it was one of those cars that I sort of did contemplate looking at buying sort of fairly seriously, that and the 1 Series. But you look at where I think they shone really well was with the 1M, because it looks kind of
Yeah.
ridiculous, yet it's got that sort of restraint where the
Yeah,
guards are really
yeah.
pumped, but you have to look at it to be able to tell. Like, and putting the two cars side by side, it's plainly obvious which one's the 1M and which one's the 135. But looking at it on the road, you sort of just go, oh, it's just a flared wheel arched BMW. It's not anything ridiculous. But now, like the vents and the strakes and the slashes and the gigantic
Yeah.
grills, and you know, you're right with the rear diffuser. What was it? Was it the E92 M3 was the first of the diffusers on the, it was on the roof or something like that, or underneath the back bumper or whatever. But they just got really, really fussy.
Yeah, the E90, so it was the E93 was the coupe M3,
Okay, yep.
and E92 was a sedan, but yeah, that
you go.
generation. I think the M3 then was still quite subtle. It had the pump guards, had the little vents behind the wheels.
I guess
I can't remember what it had in the rear.
it was a gigantic car. I remember that, because they'd gone from the E46 to the E92 and E93,
Yeah.
and the car grew so big.
Oh, it was, yeah, it was,
after that.
quite a lot bigger.
I just remember when they first came out, just going, "That's an M3." Oh my God, that thing's huge.
Yeah, but they
Massive
sound.
car.
They're probably the
When they
ones that-
run, yes, they
that
sound
was
great.
the classic. You know, they'll become the classic because the last was the naturally aspirated. You know, super responsive, amazing sound.
Yeah.
M cars.
Yeah. Well, anyway, so 50 grand, what would I buy? Probably just a GT86, GR86 actually. The new ones. You seen the new ones?
Yeah, the new ones. Yeah, yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
really nice.
Even the old ones, I reckon. They're, you know, it's
Yeah.
it's nice that they've brought out a lighter weight car
Yes.
as opposed to everything getting porky. So I reckon the 87, the first 86,
Yeah.
I'd be happy with one of them. You know, because it's
20 grand.
fun to drive. It's
Yeah.
you know, it's actually does. It's got two small seats in the back. It's actually
You've
it's
driven
pretty
one?
good. No,
Ah, you should drive one.
but I've talked to a few people who have and whatnot. But it's the lightness. You know, going back to the lightness. It's so that to me is like a replacement of an old Celica, like the
It is, yeah, 100%.
what's the ST205 or whatever it was.
Yeah.
Because it's you know, and probably a similar size and whatnot. Which is also like the you know, you're saying
Yeah.
the MX-5 was the one that they keep making. It's interesting that the new one, the ND, is gone back to the roots where it's a lighter, smaller car than they, because it's keep getting more porky and porky.
100%. Although I think that they peaked with NC2, which was the previous generation to the current one, which is where it was a bit sort of more rounded and bigger and stuff like that. I actually like those the best. They're my favourites, but anyway, controversial statement, but whatever. I don't care. But yeah, GT86, the old ones. A mate of mine just sold his actually, and the interesting thing is, he bought it for like 23, had it for 8 years, sold for 20.
Yeah, I think because I think when they came out, they were
Mad.
30 for the basic one. You know, there was a
Oh,
couple
they're
of
more than
models.
that.
I thought they started under 30
No, they
plus on roads
well,
when they first got released.
oh, maybe.
And,
I
and like
suppose,
you
yeah,
look,
because that was a GT and then there was the GTS
yeah,
spec or whatever as well.
Yeah, so
that's
they'd be
right.
more
Yeah,
fruit.
okay, yep.
but
You're
like
probably
you
right,
think,
actually.
so what they're now. I don't know, when were they mid 2000s or whenever it was? When did they come out?
2012 was the first
Oh,
year of those.
2012, there you go.
Yeah.
So that's 10 years old, right? 11 years old. And yet the price is still fetching for an 11-year-old car is, you know, nuts. So hopefully
They
after
held their
this
value very
COVID,
well.
COVID crap ceases, they'll come back to a more realistic price.
I don't know, man. I don't know. And what's interesting is that it's like the exception to the rule where there's so many of them. So generally,
You'd
when there's so
think,
many
yeah.
of them, the price gets driven down a bit. No, like there's so many of them, and they all seem to hold their value.
Yeah, but maybe because they are an affordable new car that's fun to drive, so there's nothing else really like it. If
Yeah.
you know what I mean? So maybe that's what's kept their other values up.
I just remember seeing all these online conversations with people and stuff like that. I think I brought this up before, but I'm going to again because it's pertinent to the conversation. That, you know, oh, you know, it's only got 200 horsepower, it's going to be slow. And I remember talking to someone who had a Silvia at the time. It's like, oh, yeah, why would you have one of those? They're junk, you know, my Silvia makes more power and stuff like that. Yeah, but how much power did your Silvia make when it was new?
Yeah.
And it was about the same as what that thing makes.
Similar power
And that's
weight.
NA. You know, oh, you can tune a turbo car more easily. That's true too, but the fact that there's so many of these turbo and supercharged ones floating around would suggest that, well, there's plenty of headspace there to get a bit more power
that's
out of them.
right, yeah.
So
Because you get the
why wouldn't
supercharger
you?
bolt-on kits, couldn't you, for those,
You
which are
can.
quite popular?
You can. There was a company, I don't know if they're still around in Perth, but $7 grand, drive in, drive out, supercharged.
Yeah. And I remember at the time, people saying that's quite a bit, for a supercharger kit.
Yeah.
But if you
When you
actually
factor
looked at,
all of it.
yeah, but when you actually looked at, say, if you bought the car new and it was 40 or whatever, and you added 7, it's 47. Still, what you ended up with is actually great value compared to what else was available. The next jump up was huge. So you got a car which, if you did want the more power, you had the more power,
Yeah.
and still a new car.
Well, the next step up, if you wanted sort of like a coupe rear-wheel drive, was its stablemate was the RC series from Lexus, like the RC 350s and 300s and stuff like that.
Yeah, which
with the
were
V6,
megabytes compared to
which
the,
were
yeah.
they started at like 55 or something like that, I think, and that was for the bubby small engine version, and it was a heavier car, and yeah, Lexus, but they're a bigger car, they're a heavier car, and consequently probably end up being a bit slower. So yeah, I agree, man. Like 40 grand, let's say, for the sake of argument, yeah, 40 grand for a new one at the time, 7 grand drive in, drive out supercharger kit, and you've probably got another 50% more power again,
Yeah.
and the torque as well.
And being supercharged should still be pretty responsive.
Oh yeah, just you want to go, you want to overtake someone, drop a cog, off you go, and yeah, you get supercharger noises as well, which is always a good thing.
Yeah,
definitely.
nice one.
Yeah.
So for your 50, would you get the GR86 and then have enough money to put the kit through?
I don't know.
Aren't they still like about 40? Oh, I guess everything's probably going up and up and up, isn't it?
That's if you can get one. I've
Yeah,
seen
true,
one.
yeah.
I've seen one of those cars on the road and they've been out for 2 years. That's the thing, like, I
Yeah.
don't know how long
I've
they've
seen
been
more
out.
Subaru BRZs than 86s
Yeah,
of the new style.
yeah. Well, they're all made by Subaru, basically.
Yeah,
It's just got a
yeah,
Toyota
yeah.
badge on it. But yeah, those cars have been out globally for 2 years, but I've only seen like one. I've seen one in person in Perth. That was recently at a dealership actually, and yeah, I haven't seen any more of
Yeah,
them.
I've only seen a couple on the road. One was a nice blue, a Subaru.
They look good. Like I didn't think they would be able to improve the looks of it that much, but they have. It almost looks Lexus-y.
Yeah,
It's got that
yeah,
design
no,
language of the sort of
yeah,
the
it's-
Lexus, but
it's
not
nice.
too busy. It's
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
it
yeah.
hasn't got all
They've kept it restrained.
yeah, whew, it's good because let's not go too far now, kids. I mean, it's a bit crazy. All right, so what else we got? What are we going to talk about? Okay. Do you like supercars? Ferraris, Lambos, McLarens, all that sort of stuff?
Not as much as I used to. So it was interesting, because at the Cars and Coffee, I was chatting to my mate, and like you always get the McLarens and other
Yep.
cars like that showing up.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I give them a glance, but it's like, yeah, another McLaren. Like, back when I was a kid, a Ferrari was like, oh my God, a Ferrari, like rare to see. That performance was a step above everything else.
Yep, pretty much, yeah.
Whereas now they're relatively, well, not common, but you know what I mean? Like they've lost that uniqueness and that wow factor. And the performance is not really, like you can buy a Model 3 Tesla
Yep.
that is faster than the Ferrari.
Would absolutely spank
Yeah. So
a
like,
Ferrari, yeah.
so they've lost the performance is not there. They're sort of more common. The styling, I think a lot of them are, some of the new Ferraris have sort of gone more nice, more refined and resolved styling.
They've
but
gone back to being pretty again.
yeah, which is nice. But some of the Lambos, they're very, they're sort of, it's like they're trying to outdo each other, and it's the more outrageous they make it.
Peak vulgarity.
Yeah. So the one supercar which my one car for life would be the McLaren F1. So from an,
You and everybody else, yeah.
but from an engineering point of view, I just love the whole concept and all that sort of stuff. And now I don't know if you've been keeping up with Gordon Murray Automotive and the T50 and the T33.
Yes, I have seen those, yeah.
So they're to me, like I would get one of those any day over like a Lambo or a Ferrari.
Okay.
Just from I just love that purity and that, where it's actually been designed to perform and be a driver's car, as opposed to just being outrageous and just, just heavy and just make it more powerful because they need to keep it. You know what I mean? Like that's more of the trueness of for me, for a nice car.
Yeah, 100%.
So yeah, so I would, yeah, unfortunately, which I think is a bit unfortunate, but yeah, the supercars don't do it for me like they used to.
It's funny, isn't it? You get older, your tastes change. And I mean, a couple of years ago, more than a couple of years ago, I sort of was thinking about spoiling myself and selling the MR2 and buying something a bit more expensive. And it was, NSX, and I briefly toyed with the idea of a Gallardo as well and just thought, no, I don't think I will. The NSX, this is the thing, and I've talked about this before. I'll bring it up again briefly, but the problem with the NSX was, having sat in it, the driving position was worse than the MR2. And this is the thing, right? So you get spoiled by these cars where they are the standard by which all others are judged.
Yeah.
Right? So you sit in it, and especially after you've owned it for a while, you've taken it to the track, you understand it, you love it, you know, you interact with it quite a bit, and you know its foibles, you know what it's good at, you know that you would never drive it on a dirt road or something like that. It's corrugated because you'd have your bones shaken out or whatever. But having sat, I've never driven the NSX, but having sat in it, spectacular looking car. Like, I love the way they look. Every time I see one, I was like, oh, they're just so nice. But having sat in it, it didn't feel as good. You sat too high, the dash was too low, the windscreen's too big, and it wasn't, because at that time it wasn't, was basically sort of nearly 4 times the price of the MR2, and it's like, it wasn't 4 times, it can't be 4 times the car. There's no possible way it can be 4 times the car. Not when you factor in its V6, the MR2 is faster in a straight line, it's faster in a quarter mile. Looks wise, yes. Rarity and scarcity, yep, absolutely.
And the full aluminium body, I think, is pretty cool, you know, from a technical point of view.
100%. They handle better, sort of a bit more docile to drive.
Far bigger, like quite
bigger.
big.
They weigh the same though.
Yeah, okay.
It's the aluminium thing, I think.
Yeah, no, the NSX, well, the same thing. I love it from the technical point of view, but I think they should have put out, you know, another maybe 50, 100 horsepower into it to make it, you know, if it would have had that, it was the same with the MR2. You know, if the MR2 would have stayed in A, it would have been, oh yeah, it's a mid-engine. You know. Was a turbo, puts it into another level. Same thing. I think the NSX should have had a bit more grunt, you know, to give it that something else. That's you know, would have been nice. And the other thing is, my cousin who's been in one, he said it basically hopped in it, and, you know, like outside you go, oh wow, you know, NSX, and you hop in it, and it's like you go, am I in a Civic? Like, it was very, you know, and the inside is what you see when you're driving.
Yes, of course.
It was very, you know, vanilla.
Honda.
Yeah.
Just basic Honda, like, I'm not going to say parts bin, but it's not, possibly not as special as it should have been.
Yeah.
Given the money. I mean, they were $225,000 new, those cars.
Ooh.
Yeah. In Australia anyway. The rest of the world, obviously, cheaper. But, you know, you compare that, and this is what I mean, you know, like, you get spoiled by these cars. Like, MR2 spoils us because it's a standard. And that was the thing, is that there's just no possible way this car could be 4 times better than that car. Because I know that, you know, to look at, spectacular, but I don't need to own it to look at it. I just know where there's a couple parked, I go look at them.
Although, as they say, you know, good sign of if you bought the right cars when you park it, 2 look backs means you got the right car.
Yep.
Yeah, no, you're
100%.
right. The NSX is but to the supercar thing, if I were to buy one, I would go more of the you know, if you've got a retro, but like, you know, say something like the F355 Ferrari. Even maybe the 360, something like that. You know, that to me is the, I don't know, almost at a peak Ferrari, if you know what I mean. Where they still have that nice typical Ferrari shape. They sound awesome.
I don't like the way 360s look.
Yeah, they're a little bit jelly beanish.
Controversial statement, I know, but
They are a bit, especially the headlights. You know, they've got that weird sort of like they are for 4C or whatever. They've got the spider, so the headlights look a bit, you know, odd. But as a shape, I quite like the, you know, the curves. They look.
The 430, I think, is a better looking car. It's a newer car. I think it's the back end of the 430 with the small quad tail lights looks fantastic. Probably its best angle actually. But yeah, the 430, because it didn't have such big headlights as well. Like the 360.
So the 430 had those
headlights.
sort of big eyebrow style headlights, didn't it?
No,
No, I'm thinking the 458.
Yeah, 458 had those. 430 was sort of like,
I remember
sort of
now,
more of a slit. It was sort of very similar to the 360.
Yes,
They were sort of more of an oval,
but
sort
more
of
edgy,
vertical slit.
more,
Yeah, 100%.
more
I just think
aggressive.
they're a better looking car.
No, you're right. Yeah, 430 would be nice. But yeah, something like that, I would also note.
355 though, I think they're a very good looking car, very much so. But from everything that I've read, from even contemporary journalism and stuff like that at the time, is like good, but should have been better.
Yeah, and I think it'll be a disappointment. It's like, you know, never met your hero sort of thing. Whereas it's still school, but from a look and a sound point of view, they for me tick the Ferrari
that flat
box.
plane V8 sound. Yeah, but I must admit that's the thing though. Like, and I've touched on this before. I won't go into it again. But the most disappointing car I ever drove was a Ferrari. 308 GTS.
I've never driven one.
Yeah, 308 GTS, Magnum PI Ferrari, like 80s one. It was a fuel injected one as well, so it should have been better. It was just wasn't as fast as it should have been.
Yeah.
And it wasn't as smooth or as nice as it should have been. You know, this is back when it sort of felt very agricultural to operate.
Yeah.
Spectacular to look at. Like looking at it is like, oh, so nice.
Making a PI.
But yeah, exactly.
Grow the
But
mustache.
yeah, well, there you go. Yeah. Anyway, he's a much better looking man, let's face it. But just, sitting and just going, I couldn't. And
Well,
those cars are 100 grand plus now. It's
Yeah,
like,
but I think it's all nostalgia. Like, it's like all
It
the old
is.
Holdens and
It is.
Fords and all that sort of stuff.
Yep.
It's
can't put a price on it, or you put a
Yeah.
very big price on it, let's face it.
they're probably great for the time compared to other cars, in terms of performance and that sort of stuff, or like, a step above a lot of them.
Yeah, maybe, yeah.
But nowadays it's like, I think the performance thing is it's sort of that race is sort of gone. Or
guess-
it's a lot of cars are amply quick.
Yes. Well, I guess maybe I had, the problem was I wasn't driving it when it was new. I was driving it after the fact and then operating much more modern stuff. Maybe I judged it a bit too harshly, but the thing is that, just the gear shifter was way too heavy, and like for the amount you're having to work to drive this thing, it just wasn't fast enough.
Yeah.
Maybe it would have been fine back in the 80s, but
Interesting.
but perfect, but like spectacular looking car.
Yeah.
All of those cars, like from the 288 GTO, all through that era was, I think, Ferrari's probably their peak in terms of the way their design was and stuff like that. Just fantastic.
The
That
nice shaped seats and the gated gear shift and that sort of stuff. Yeah.
100%.
Classic gauges.
But yeah, it's interesting you say that supercars used to love them, because I did too. I used to have, posters and stuff. I've got some posters around here still, but things like Countachs and Diablos and Testarossas and stuff like that. Now it's like, I don't know if I'd be prepared to go through the pain and just the pain of ownership.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. Like, I think from all accounts, the servicing requirements, even from a fairly modern like 360, where you got to do the timing belt or chain or whatever it is every 20,000 or something, and you got to pull the engine out to do it, because it's that sort of stuff makes it a pain in the butt to.
Well, not only that, but I know someone who's got a 360. It's a hard top, but it's got the F1 gearbox.
Oh yeah.
So it's one of the first of the.
So they're manualised, aren't they? So it's a manual gearbox, but it's robotised.
And he never drives it. The battery's either going flat, or it just, he never drives it. And I know why, is because it's probably not that great to operate, to be perfectly honest. It's sort of, again, the looks promise something that you sort of operate and you go, well, it's so much of a pain. And I know, and this is the thing I suppose really, is that if a car is making you work, it needs to be an enjoyable car. Like an old, like a 1970s manual gearbox, something rear-wheel drive, something that's loud, and something that, is engaging. But when it's something that you sit in and you have an expectation of it working and being like amazing to drive, and it's like,
And it's a bit meh.
because the battery's flat, or or for one reason or another, there's only 4 cylinders firing or something like that, or there's what's that puddle of whatever that is underneath there, and it's like, oh, or what's that noise and what's that creak, and why is it doing that? It's like, I'm not interested.
Yeah.
It's too stressful. I'm not worth $1 squillion. So I look at those things and I go, nice. However, I'll stick with what I've got. Thank you very much.
Yeah, like I say, hop in the MR2, it's going to fire up. You can hop in and drive it down to wherever you want, and
Fantastic.
which is why I think the MR2s will their time will come when they'll actually become. People will go, oh, you know what I mean? Because they are very unique in a lot of ways, and they're.
It does suffer in that sort of blandness in the interior, though, I think.
Yeah, a little bit.
I
But
think
it
so.
is, for the.
I mean, for the price point, maybe it was. You
But
can
it's nice
tell.
that it's got the nice centre high console, the short stumpy gear shift, that sort of semi.
But I look at the gauge cluster and I go, it could be a Corolla's gauge cluster,
True, yeah. And here we go.
Like
the
those
NSX
interior
City.
bits that exactly. But those interior bits that I brought off you, that will help to sort of spice things up a little bit, because I got into the point where.
Yeah, look, give it a bit of a modern kick.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
But I got to the point where I started to get a little bit bored with how it looked. And I've got sort of 3 different centre consoles now. And one of them I actually ended up painting a different colour to the standard black, because I got sick of looking at the standard black. It's actually a Nissan colour from the interior trim of, it's the same colour as an interior trim on a Nissan Stagia, fun fact. But I ended up painting it that, and it sort of broke up the
So is
black.
that like a silvery sort of?
But it's like a sort of satin silver.
Yeah,
So it's
okay,
a little bit of sparkle, but not really, really shiny. It just looks a little bit nice. It's quite a deep silver.
Yeah, that
as
would
well.
lighten up. But like I say, I don't know. I think yours is all black. I mean, both the MR2s were all black seats, black carpet, black dash, black roof. So it does feel a bit, it needs a bit of contrast to give it a bit of pop.
It does, absolutely. Not too much, just a
Yeah,
little bit.
just something subtle.
But then, of course, I think my seats are also filthy, so they're almost black, but they're supposed to have a pattern on them. But you know, I don't think they've ever been washed. Certainly not with my ownership anyway. But yeah, it's just one of those things that it just needs a bit of a cleanup. Which, again, it comes back to the contemporary cars of the GT86. The interior is nice.
Yeah, because they've got the red stitching and stuff, don't they? So it gives it a bit of something different.
You know, and they've got like the console's got stitching on it, and you've got a nice aluminium sort of machined gear knob, and the boot's got contrasting stitching, and you've got binnacle gauges and stuff, and it's all they've made an effort. Is the thing, right?
Yeah.
They've actually made it look like something that is worth time spending in.
Slightly bit more special than your mundane.
100%.
Yeah,
100%.
and that's what you need.
Yeah, but yeah, supercars. I'm of the same opinion, man. It's like now I sort of look and I go, I'm just not interested in the huge amount of pain that would be associated with it, and money. Let's face it. All right. Would you own an electric car right now?
I think I would, yeah.
Yeah? Just commuting and...
I think they're from, I don't think there's anything, sort of like the range anxiety and all that sort of stuff. I think realistically, for the majority of the trips, the ample, more than ample.
Yep.
If you did a trip, down south or up north or whatever, you'd plan it, or, take another car, whatever. Well, you do that trip, invariably, most households have more than one car.
Yeah.
And even if you did only have that one car, you'd plan your trip accordingly and have a bit of a break or whatever halfway through and top it up. Even then, I think they're fine. I don't think they're the premium you pay for electric. In my mind, you're paying it because you want the latest tech, you want the instant grunt, all that sort of jazz, as opposed to you doing it because you're getting the economy, because by the time you pay back the difference, it's years and years and years. But from the instant grunt, even out of the non-power ones, like the basic Model 3, whatever that is.
Go!
It's a real world performance is
amazing.
It's huge. So it's I'd happily have one. I quite like the it's interesting actually. There's quite a few Teslas you see driving around. And
around your area, yeah, because you're a bit bit bougie,
Well,
anyway.
not really, no.
Yeah, I know.
You do see them, like, literally you go for a drive and you pass a handful of them and you stop at the lights and there's, sometimes 3-4 of them.
100%, yeah.
But it's interesting, they're all the same. Like, the Model Y looks like a slightly
Taller.
blown up Model 3.
Model 3, yeah.
The styling is, a little bit generic, I think. The Model Y looks a bit awkward. The Model 3 is okay.
The Y doesn't look good, I don't think.
Yeah, the Y looks a little bit awkward. But like they're either, white, blue, red or grey. Well, they're the only ones. And they're all either got the aero wheel covers.
Yep.
Or people pop them off and you can see the nice looking wheels.
Yep.
And it's actually, I've seen, I think, 2 with aftermarket wheels, which was a refreshing change because they actually look, you go, oh wow, it's unique.
It looks different, yeah.
Going back to that thing, you don't want to be a sheep like everyone else.
Yeah.
You want something a bit unique. And if I got one of those, that's the first thing I'd do is get a nice set of wheels. one had a sort of a fairly modern looking, sort of like a slightly machined face with a bit of black.
Oh yeah.
Which looked it looked okay. But the one I really liked was like a deeper dish, so like a nice polished lip.
Dish.
You need the dish. And so the polished lip and like a not black, which I'm not a fan of black wheels because in my mind you can't see the actual pattern of the wheel.
Yeah.
Like a gunmetal.
Oh yeah.
Pattern, but it just transformed the car. Like the car looked so different. It was really nice.
It's amazing actually, the difference a set of wheels make to a car.
Oh, absolutely.
Any car.
Well, the Ute was, the Ute I had was just a poverty pack Ute with one of the windows.
The Conno van.
The dual cab.
That's yep.
So they had steel 14s, and I got some 16s from whatever Mazda equivalent or whatever, the 4-drive type ones.
Yeah.
They were 16 by 7, so quite wide.
Yep.
And I got the equivalent 16-inch, because you have to have commercial type tyres on because it's a Ute 1-tonner.
Yep.
And they were basically flush with the guards.
Oh, nice.
And the tyres went from like a 185 to a 215.
Yep.
With a slightly lower profile, and even with a still a jacked up, it was only to a drop, it's quite high right height.
Yep.
Wasn't slammed. It just made the car looked, like it actually transformed the car, looked like a different car.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, for sure. The wheels definitely make the car.
Well, I had years ago, I had a little Mitsubishi Lancer, a little two-door, the CC shape coupe, which is like the jelly bean shape. I'll flash a photo up. I'll show you later.
Oh, the
1993 shape, basically.
Yeah, okay, like the Satria GTI, like that style of.
Similar, yeah. So, because that Satria was that Mirage. So
okay,
that shape Mirage. It wasn't the later Mirage. It was the earlier Mirage.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
So it was that shape. So yeah, you're probably spot on. But mine was the coupe. So they had the boot.
Yeah,
So it was the coupe
yeah.
rather than the actual hatch. So it's still
With the triangle tail
two
lights?
doors.
The one?
No, that was the model after. These had sort of almost teardrop tail lights.
Yeah,
It was the one that you used to see heaps of.
Yes.
But
yeah,
none of them
slightly
had,
more roundy.
none of them had colour-coded bumpers. They're all like the cheap version or whatever.
Yeah, the poverty pack.
Exactly. So they had all grey bumpers and they had
I think that was from the era when they had the was the Japanese yen or something, when all the cars basically they stripped them all out and they released a whole heap of cars with to keep the price the same.
Yep.
They just kept stripping the equipment out and making it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, this one had the 1.8, had the colour-coded bumpers and stuff like that. Never came with aircon, so I threw aircon in it. It made a hell of a difference because it just made the car so much nicer. But I remember, because I bought it from a mate actually, and he kept the wheels, and it just had like the black steelies or whatever on there, so it just looked nothing particularly spectacular. Then I found a set of 16s, and I'd driven it to a friend's house, and his sister had seen it and was like, oh, okay, yeah, that's all right, it's cute enough. And when I put the 16s on it and drove there, she's like, tell me when you are selling this car, because I want to buy it. And it was just because of the wheels.
Yeah,
All I'd done was change the wheels. No different exhaust, I hadn't lowered it or anything like that. I just put 16s on it, and just wheels that were aesthetically pleasing enough to complement the car, and it just transformed it. It was amazing.
Yeah, absolutely right. The wheels, and also I think the stance.
Yes.
So like
guards.
all the GTIs, from the the newer sort of generations, the Golf 5 or whatever, I'm not quite au fait with them, but where they basically had the wheels were basically flush with the guards.
Yeah.
And the styling of the wheels was sounds a bit, not quite whatever, but just having those wheels, it gave the car, just look right, if you know what I mean.
Actually, there was that period, I think, where it sort of started, I'm going to say like around 2003, where all the manufacturers seemed to wake up and say, well, let's make our cars look a bit special. And I mean, even things like, the old Focus XR5s and stuff like that, with the 5-cylinder Volvo engines in them.
They sound pretty cool.
They do. They sound really good, actually. 5-cylinder engines sound half a V10, baby. It sounds awesome. V10's best-selling engine as well, so you're nearly there. But yeah, like just seeing those, and they had good wheels and they had pumped guards, and you're right about the Golfs. I mean, I'm not a particular Volkswagen fan, but the cars looked sort of more, I guess, aggressive, especially the GTIs and stuff like that. And it's much the same with a lot of the Honda started doing it as well, where the up-spec models would have better wheels, and it sort of would fill the guards out a bit more and stuff, and it just looked better.
Yeah, well, like the 03 Rex, the wheels, because they had the nice pumped out guards front and back in the sedan one, and the wheels were 17s, but they looked like they were like
low offset,
30-40 mil too far in. And it looked weird, like, it just looked, if you actually space those wheels out, it just transforms the look of the car.
Yeah, 100%. It's like they went for the cheapest manufacturer of 17-inch wheels they could get, and then went, well, we'll save some money in not making them as wide or having the offset lower or higher so they sit further in the car, so that it cheapens them. And
I don't know. You wonder what goes through their minds, because I mean, if you're getting a wheel made, the offset wouldn't change the economics of it. If you use that.
Well, you'd think so.
Probably do it to your spec, but wonder why they.
It was actually interesting because you look at, and this is the thing, like you look at some of these manufacturers, and they have like their OEM wheels they make for cars, and all of them have got such like high offsets, so they sit so far in. Like, to give you an idea, like. My experience with like a 2005 Mazda 6, like the wheels that are on it, very boring. They're just like a star, and they sit in typical Mazda fashion. I think the offset's like plus 45 mil, so they sit quite far in. I put a set of OEM Mitsubishi FTO wheels on it, which were plus 38. Transform the look of the car.
Yeah.
They sat further out. They filled the guards properly. The tyres were a bit fatter, so it just made it look a bit more purposeful. But the difference of 7 millimeters, and it's like. It looks amazing, and but you're right. They've got it like a 17, and the wheels sit so far, and it just look at that. What are you doing?
Because the wheel design was actually quite nice, for a factory, because they're nice twin spoke sort of 5-spoke twin spokes. Yeah. Now I did the same with the. Don't know if you remember. What I had back in the day. The Celica I had the RA. Geez, I can't remember. The not the 22, not the Coke bottle one. The first
The 40?
RA40. RA40. Yeah.
The one with the big lift. Oh, you had the coupe.
No, sorry, the coupe. Yeah, not the
Okay.
cockroach. The coupe.
Yep. Did yours have the quad headlights, or did it have?
Mine had the.
brick headlights?
So mine was a 78, I think. So the 2 round, or the quad round headlights.
Yep.
And yeah, because I think the later ones had the 2 square ones.
Yes.
And that had you know, the 14-inch steelies.
Yep.
When I got it, and I got a actually the Japanese from a Japanese record back in the day.
Yeah.
15s, and they were like the Simmons snowflakes, so polished aluminium lip,
Oh yeah.
a
Yeah.
3-piece wheel
Yep.
with a sort of snowflake a gold wheel, and the
Like
car was that sort of creamy.
Hidden, sort of spokey. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Yep.
still quite common. Like, you know, they went through. It's still quite a you know, you can get similar wheels still today. And the same thing. So they were, you know, from like, I don't know, 185 to I think 205, 40 to 15, slightly lower profile. But the actual offset was right, so they set out further.
Yep.
Same thing. It transformed the car, made it look
Just looks better.
very yeah, not fully sick, but nice.
It was a bit early for fully sick, I think.
Yeah. Made it look-
We,
made
we
it look
weren't
good.
quite at fully sick in the early 90s. That was much later. Yeah, that was in the auto salon days of
That's right.
early 2000s. Good lord. Yeah, electric car. I know a few people with electric cars, and just talking to them about their experiences with it and stuff. One of them bought one of those brand new MG things, which I'm not particularly interested in, but I was interested to know about like the actual living with experience and the charging experience and stuff like that. And it's nearly 18 hours to charge that battery fully. on mains
Yeah, unless
power.
you get a fancy fast charger. Yeah.
Fast charge, but you know, you just plug it into your 240 volt mains at home. 18 hours.
Yeah,
a long
but then
time.
really most trips you do, you like you top it up within a
Yeah.
couple of hours. And I think the other thing would be cool if I did have an electric car to have the ability to charge it off solar, because then essentially you are getting then green and free motoring, which will make sense.
Yep.
But then invariably if you're using it for commuting, where you work, unless they got solar charging.
They need charging stations at work.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly right. 'Cause
So
if
yeah,
you want
that
to
side
go
of
somewhere
things.
after work, and you hadn't charged it in a while, it's like I've got enough time, got enough juice to get home, but go nowhere else. So there's no
Yeah.
stopping at the shops for food or anything like that on the way home. No,
But
go
I
straight
reckon
home.
that thing, the cars, I don't know, they've probably all got minimum 300 kilometres range or whatever.
Maybe. I don't think the old
Yeah, I
Nissan
think so.
Leafs don't.
No, but they were pretty suboptimal, let's say.
Suboptimal.
No, so my understanding of those is that they had very poor, that zero battery management.
Yeah,
So, which is why the batteries crapped out pretty early on,
yeah, pretty much.
and yeah, they weren't very well executed. But the current range, like even I think the MGs, which are the cheapo ones, I think they still have decent, it'd be a few hundred, at least 200 and something, I would imagine.
I think it's 220 or something like that.
Yeah,
I think he gets
so for
as a
normal
range.
commuting, like you could easily.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You know.
Well, I think he worked out that he would go to and from work every day, and then, like, you could probably do like a food trip or something like that one of the nights to like the shopping centre or something like that, and then charge on the weekend.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So then drive the petrol-powered car on the weekend, basically, because he's got a CX-5 as well as one of those
Yeah,
MG
okay,
electric
yeah,
things, and bought it new. And it's actually much the same thing. He's like, he was looking for different wheels for it as well, because they had mag wheels and then they had the low drag covers on them. And he's like,
Yeah,
"Oh,
yeah, yeah.
shit, mate, I'll take those bloody things off. That crap." But it's just interesting talking to him because you're trying to find out what the stud pattern is and what the offset is and stuff like that,
Yeah.
to try and make it look a bit more purposeful and stuff. And it's a black car. And it looks all right. I mean, I don't particularly like SUVs or anything like that, but it looks all right.
Yeah, they're pretty. And I think if you had an electric car, you'd probably just change the way you operate. So basically, you come home and you just plug it in,
Yeah.
and it's just what I mean. It just
Like
charges.
charging your phone.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, just to
Yeah.
be a phone. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, I quite like. I think the Teslas are probably, quite good in a lot of their tech. They've done really well. But the styling wise, like the Ioniq 5, the Honda, that looks a bit very 80s with the very
The square-edged one.
sort
Yeah,
of like
yeah.
a squarish
Yeah.
Golf. That looks pretty funky.
Yeah, it looks different, I must admit. Hyundai's
Yeah.
doing a good job of differentiating themselves, and I think a lot of it has to do with their current boss.
Yeah, I don't know.
He's from, is he from Volkswagen or from BMW? I think Albert Biermann is the guy's name,
Yeah,
German.
okay.
And he's basically
Yeah.
gone, right, Hyundai, we're going to do things differently now. We're getting away from this economy shitbox reputation we've got. We're going to do things a bit differently. It's like that Vision. I don't know if you've seen that Vision concept. Looks like an old DeLorean.
Oh, yeah. We
That
keep
looks
saying it's
hot.
going to go in production. It's not going to go in production. It's going to go in production.
That
it's
is an
gonna go-
enormous car, though.
Yeah,
It's
okay,
huge
yeah.
car.
That was
Like,
I like that selling that. That was pretty cool.
yeah. I don't know if I'd buy a Hyundai, but
I don't know. I reckon see the like the new N Hyundai, i30 and i20N.
yeah.
I reckon they're like I reckon they're a decent car. Like
I don't think they're cheap enough, though. They're getting up there in price, and
Yeah,
it's
probably.
not compelling enough because the thing is, look, put your comments down in the comments below and flame me as much as you like, but there is a reason why Hyundais and Kias are not as expensive as Mazdas and Toyotas and Hondas. It's because they're not as good a car. It's as simple as that. They're getting up there with their tech. The designs are getting more contemporary, and they're definitely double downing on their research and development, stuff like that. But
in what way do you think they're not as good as a Honda?
they're just the technology, like the engineering isn't as good.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Like one of the things, like you remember those Veloster Ns, the Honda, with the
Yeah.
weird, it's got the weird door configuration
three-door, yeah.
Well, one of the things about that is that I knew someone who had one of those cars, and she'd gone from a Mark V Golf, which is like early 2000s, I think it is,
Yeah.
GTI, to one of those, and she bought it brand new, so it wasn't like a second-hand experience and she got a lemon. It was a brand new car, and I'd said to her, well, what's it like? She goes, it's good. And I thought, oh, there's a butt here.
Yeah.
And yeah, there was a big, very firm, round butt, and it was literally like, for how fast it is, the fuel economy is not that great.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
And that suggests to me perhaps not as good a engineering in terms of managing fuel and all that sort of stuff and technology and stuff. And she was saying as well that and I know a lot of modern cars do this where they might crank for a little bit longer than usual because the timing isn't quite right.
Yeah,
and the engine has to basically start when the timing's just so. They call it
might be in emissions.
probably.
As well,
It's
yeah.
that, what's the term, the stoichiometric ratio needs to be
yeah.
perfect, like the perfect fuel-air mix or whatever. But she's saying it was doing it regularly, like a lot.
Yeah, okay.
And even after like a short journey, it was doing it. It just wasn't as good as it should have been for the price.
Yeah, okay.
Because it wasn't cheap. Like they were an expensive car. I mean, for a Hyundai, it was an expensive car. You compare it to like a GTI or something, it wasn't as expensive as that. But you're getting close to the value of it. Like we're not talking about 10 grand cheaper. We're talking like 5 or 6 grand cheaper.
Yeah, the gap is narrow, but I think they're a lot of new cars are basically for a commuter car. They're all ample in terms of what you need.
Yeah.
But the one interesting thing is that they're N cars. They're i30 and whatever. If you do a track day,
Elantra N or whatever, and
yeah. So the full because I think they're doing an N line now, which is sort of
Right.
like not the full, like most cars do these days, whether you get
it's got a body kit.
Oh, and like stiff suspension, a few other nice some stripes. No, but when they do the, where you get some of the, it's a more livable car, but not as hardcore and not as powerful as the full,
Yep. Yep.
Full Monty. And you can actually take them to the track and not void your warranty, which I think speaks volumes in terms of their confidence in their, in their cars.
Not bad. Not bad.
Yeah, I think that's
okay.
pretty ballsy.
It's not, actually, yeah, it is pretty ballsy. I must admit. I don't know if I could see Toyota doing that, but then
Well, no, like you buy a Porsche and it's, they don't. From my understanding is that they don't.
you've just reminded me of something saying Porsche, because, and here's the interesting thing, right? I knew someone, is one of my dad's mates, a little bit younger than my dad, and he bought a contemporary Porsche at the time. I think it was like it was 997, when 997 was a new 911, the 997 generation 911, which was, what's that, 05 I think, or 06, around there. Anyway,
Yeah.
brand new. It wasn't like a GT2 RS or GT3 RS. It wasn't a top of the was one. I think it was just a Carrera 2, so rear-wheel drive, NA, but still an awesome car. Probably the car you'd pick actually if you wanted to just have a good all-round without anything too hardcore. You'd probably go Carrera 2 because it's rear-wheel drive, it's simpler, it was a manual, you've got sound deadening, you've got all the creature comforts and stuff like that, but it's not like really super hardcore like a GT2 RS or a GT3 RS where it's more track sort of focus and stuff. And he was saying that Porsche had given him a voucher for a track day in his car when he bought the car. But then in the same instance it said, but if you go to the track day, we would look very hard and closely at your warranty if there's a problem that occurs. It's like, so on one hand, we're going to give you this, but on the other hand, we could potentially take something away from you of great value in that, yeah, if you blow it up, or if something happens and there's a problem with the car, we might not necessarily honour a warranty.
Which is
so come to this track day and void your warranty maybe.
For Porsche, which is you know they are a sports car.
100%. Well, unless you're looking at like one of those Cayennes or Macans or whatever.
Yeah, it's actually interesting, isn't it? All those cars have all those car brands have introduced SUVs, which is without them they probably would have been far worse off.
I think honestly, I think you're absolutely right. Porsche would be, I'm not going to say dead, but I'm going to say having trouble, much more trouble than they are, you know, than they would have otherwise had there not been a Cayenne or a Macan. Cayenne in particular, I think, simply because they platform shared it with a VW and just made things sort of more logical or whatever, made it faster and more ridiculous. But yeah, I think you're right. Without those cars, because people want those things, but then people want them because they make them, but then they make them because people want them. So it's like that weird.
Well, I guess if you're a Porsche person and you want to have a family car and you can get a Porsche,
they're very capable.
Keep it in the family.
Those Cayennes are very capable cars, though.
Yeah, I remember when they first came out, the V8 model, whatever it was, GTS or whatever it was. They did one of the like classic rallies or one of those events with it, just to see how Porsche it really was. And it was actually obviously not as good as a hardcore sports car, but it was actually pretty, like I say, pretty capable.
The interesting thing as well is that they are apparently one of the second-hand bargains of like SUVs and four-wheel drives and stuff like that, because there's still low-range off-road and stuff like that. You can still take them off-road. They've got
the Porsche's got low range.
Oh yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
The Cayenne's like fully off-road. It's all electronic and stuff like that, so you can select it from the cabin. Don't have to get out and reset hubs or any of that sort of peasant nonsense, apparently. But yeah, you can sort of get out and go over the trails, and they've got reasonable ground clearance and stuff like that. And they're fast, they're fast as shit. You've got a V8 or a V8 twin turbo, whichever, take your pick.
Sound nice.
Yeah, they can sound nice. You get one for 10 grand.
Yeah, you sort of wonder if it's similar to the other cheap Europeans where
there's that.
There's a reason they're 15 grand.
Yeah, but then the depreciate on them is so steep. Like the depreciation is unbelievable. But they've got something like 3.2 ton towing capacity as well.
Yeah, wow, yeah, okay.
So a big car.
Yeah, I guess it'd be big power, big brakes.
I mean, good deal if you're prepared to roll the dice. And the interesting thing is like the various car forums around and stuff like that. They're talking about what would you have as like a good tow car. They frequently come up.
Oh wow!
It's like I've got a Cayenne and I paid 9 grand for it, and I've done like a couple of coil packs or something like that because they overheated because there's a problem with the heat shield, which is all fixed and it's been great ever since. And it's like, all right, what's servicing? It's a little bit more, but it's not in line with pretty much every other big SUV. It's not terribly expensive or whatever. But then
I've never really never looked at them. Like
I just get scared because I see the badge and I go, oh, that's going to be pricey if there's something wrong with it, definitely. All right, man. Well, look, I think we'll end it there, seeing as I think you're yawning or something like that.
It's all good.
No?
Yeah.
All right. Anyway, my mistake. I'm about to yawn though, I must admit. Yeah, we're done, I think. Thank you very much, everyone, for tuning in. It's been a pleasure, and thank you for being here, sir.
No worries. Thanks, Joe, for having me. It was.
Hope you enjoyed it. I hope you enjoy it. And it's good to get an insight because the other guests that I have, they've done it a couple of times each, and it's just good to revisit some of the old subjects and get a new perspective on it and stuff like that. And I'm glad you could make it. So thank you.
Thank you, Joe.
Much appreciate it. And see you next time. Bye.
Bye.